24th Inaugural Lecture Series, proudly brought to you by the Faculty of Graduate Studies at the University of Moratuwa. To officially commence today's proceedings, I consider it a privilege to invite Professor Dinesh Samarasinghe at the University of Moratuwa to introduce our professor for the day, Professor Mrs. Thanuja Sandanayake, Department of Interdisciplinary Studies at the Faculty of Information Technology of the University of Moratuwa.
Good afternoon. Professor Thanuja Sandanayake is a professor attached to the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies in the Faculty of Information Technology. She is the current head of the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies and the former director of Postgraduate Studies in the Faculty of Information Technology. She is the first professor appointment in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies. Professor Sandanayake joined the University of Moratuwa in 2005 as a lecturer professional and then became senior lecturer afterwards, completing Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy degrees in Educational Technology and became a professor in 2021. Over the last 19 years, she has served the University of Moratuwa in many academic and administrative positions in different capacities. Her major research interest area, educational technology and learning analytics, social innovation, social entrepreneurship and organizational behavior. Professor Thanuja has published over 50 publications in reputed index journals, international conferences, national forums and 3 book chapters as well. She is currently supervising several PhD research students at the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies and Master Level Research Project at the University of Moratuwa and other higher educational institutions. She further extended her service as a student counselor at the University of Moratuwa. She in 2010, since 2010, and has guided the undergraduate students as a senior treasurer in the Faculty of Information Technology Students Union over the last 10 years. Professor Sandanayake has contributed in the design and development process of the first external degree of the University of Moratuwa, Bachelor of Information Technology since 2006, and she is currently serving as the Level 3 coordinator of the BIT program. She has served as a subject matter expert and consultant for several projects and evaluations under Ministry of Education, National Institute of Education, and Ministry of Science and Technology. She is also collaborating with IT industry in research and academic work and served as a resource person for private sector involvements and projects. Now it's time for Professor Thanuja to deliver her inaugural speech. Thank you.
Right. Good evening. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you, Professor Dinesh, for your wonderful introduction, and thank you very much. The D90 is here. And the Dean FTS, Professor Gopura, Dean Architecture, Professor Sangika, and esteemed academic staff of the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies, as well as other staff members who are joining, and as well as non-academic staff members who are joining here from the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies, and ladies and gentlemen. So, very good afternoon to all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank you, especially the FGS, for giving me this opportunity to deliver the inaugural lecture of my inaugural lecture. So my topic today is leveraging educational technology and redefining learning spaces to build resilient learners. So this topic actually, when Professor Gopura asked me to give the topic, I was thinking what to do. Maybe to talk about my own research or few publications, or else what to do. So then he actually was advised me to select a topic which is technical but should be delivered in very layman term. So therefore I selected a combination of the research it's about the 90% of research that I do, and as well as me as an academic, as a teacher for the last 19 years. So, thought of sharing, my ideas with you. So it was wonderful to hear Professor Priyan at the beginning explaining many things that, which is like he is establishing, he has taken the preamble for my topic. So at his introduction for this inaugural lecture. Right. So my outline today is that in the first few minutes I will be discussing about who's a learner and what learning is about and what the learners basically be challenging and how to make an empowered learner and what are the learning spaces and how to make these learning spaces and to build these learners active and how to use educational technology for effective learning and making the learner finally a resilient learner. So this is the presentation outline for the day. So let's move on to the first question, who's a learner? So I know mostly like 90% of us are teachers here. My first question for you, who's a learner? Now, when I was trying to find out who's a learner, so this is a question all of us can ask from us. Whether do we really know who's a learner? So this is not, you don't have to be, think of an imaginary learner. This is just the typical learner that we meet every day, maybe an undergrad or probably a school kid that we meet. So when I try to, identify who's a learner, I just wanted to know what the scientific definition of a learner, because if you just type it in any, either you Google it, you can find the answer for the learner. So I was trying to find out what's the actual definition of a learner, or do we really know who's a learner? So I tried to, do my research on finding who's a learner. And it was really hard to find any renowned scientist has defined who's a learner. It has never done. So, but other than that, I found few scientists, maybe the researchers, from the field of educational psychology and cognitive science. They talked about the different attributes describe a learner, but they have never explained who's a learner. So they have actually discussed about the cognitive process of the learner motivation, their thinking process, how they organize the stuff, and what is their, retaining of information in their heads. So these are the factors that they have discussed in terms of these areas: memory, how the memory works, attention space works, how their problem solving abilities works, and their influence on the social interaction. Now, on these areas, they have tried to explain the characteristics of a learner rather defining a learner. But then I was thinking, okay, now I have to, define sort of, have to have a working definition at least for the day, because without that, I cannot further move. So I thought of, defining my own way of a learner. And this is the definition that I found. And this is my own definition. So learners could be the individuals that engage in the process of acquiring new knowledge, skills, behaviors, or attitudes through the experience, study, or interaction. Now, this is the working definition for the day, because otherwise, without having a scientific definition, I cannot proceed. So, now, if we know this is a learner who possess, who try to acquire new knowledge, skills, or behaviors through, different experience they do, different studies they do, we meet learners every day. Now, my next thing was I was trying to identify again and again, then who's the teacher? Because we try to understand who's the teacher is about. Now, there I found, this is Azur Heavens is a coach or he's a trainer who has been working in several countries, worldwide countries like Spain, Chile, Canada, US, and China, who has been working as a coach. And he was asking this question from different contexts, different student sets, different people. What makes a good teacher great? Is a question that he has been asking from several audience. He has been repeating this question over and over again, asking the same thing. And he found very interesting answers. Now, some says a great teacher loves to teach. So we as teachers, yes, we love to teach. Some people says we love to teach. Some people says great teacher loves to learn because we learn things. Some people says great teacher is a content expert. Yes. So there are many PhD holders here, and I know after you obtaining a PhD, of course you become a subject expert on a particular area. Yes, true. We are content expert. So some people say the good teacher is a knowledge keeper. Yes, they have a lot of knowledge with them, so they try to provide knowledge. Interestingly, some people say great teacher is not a teacher as well. So now it's a question for us as teachers, who are we? What do we really do? Now, I believe, other than this identifying who we are, I think the best thing for a teacher is to understand who's a learner. We as teachers, our role is to identify who's a learner. Right. Now, when you still talk about the learner, this is the learner that we meet every day. Now, if you take learners, we have learners in the classroom, we have learners at home, we find learners everywhere. What's learning for the learners? How do they really feel about learning? How do they really feel, and what do they really think about what they have to do? Now, when you think about the learners, these are the questions that the students are having or the learners are having. What do we learn? One question that they ask. And other question, why do we learn? How do we learn? From where do we learn? When do we learn? These are the few questions that the students are asking from them. Now, it's difficult for them to identify the answers for these questions. Now, for me as a teacher, the biggest problem of me is that do we know the answers for these questions, even as the teachers? Now, when you talk about this, we have to first define then what is learning? What is learning? What is learning for the learners? Now, when you talk about the learning, like previously, there are a lot of scientific, findings about a lot of scientific findings about what is learning, and people have described scientifically right now about with a lot of experimentation, especially in the cognitive sciences and educational psychology. What is learning? So this is one definition that I quote. I'm not going to explain these definitions. This is from the 9 Conditions of Learning by Robert Gagne, who's a very famous educational psychologist, who defined what is learning. Now, even after referring so many, definitions, once again, I created my own working definition because it has a lot of technical, sayings if you refer to scientific definitions. So this is what my definition is. Learning is a process. Yes, it's a process of acquiring new or modifying existing knowledge, behaviors, skills, value, or preferences. Now, this is what I believe we try to either acquire something new knowledge or try to modify stuff. We try to see whether the existing knowledge or existing values, behaviors can be sharpened, enhanced, or developed. Now, we as teachers, are we doing this? Now, when we are doing this, I would like to share some of the experience as an academic throughout. For the last 19 years, what I found, especially in terms of the learning, teaching for the undergrads, I found a lot of difficulties the students are facing. And I try to, categorize them into these few areas. The biggest learning challenge that students are facing is adaptation to change. So they are reluctant to change. Now, when you have to change, when you are to change, when you're supposed to change yourself, when you're supposed to adapt, there are a lot of other difficulties comes like language barriers, poor learning habits that they possess, and especially the low self-esteem that our students are having. And also, now due to all these, poor habits, low self-esteem about themselves, and so many other challenges to, adoption to change, they start, issues with development of required skill set. Now, this is we experience every day as a technical faculty. Our students are complaining. In recent past, this is becoming worse. And also, students are having a lot of assessment pressure, exam pressure, assignment, deadlines. Now, these are the learning challenges that I encounter. Now, these are my personal experience as a teacher, and this is and as well as some sort of research insights as well. So these are the learning challenges that we observe that the students are having. Now, when you think of how to get rid of these challenges and how to make the learners learning, is that I would say the answer gives you is to make the learner independent. Making an independent learner. Now, who's that? Do we know independent learner? Now, independent learner, technically defined as an individual who takes responsibility on their own learning. Now, who's that? Are we meeting these kind of learners in the class? We rarely see these kind of people. Now, when you see these people, do we really know these people? Do we really understand these people? How do we identify these people? Who this is? An individual independent learner is a self-driven person. Is a self-driven, self-motivated, and possessing a lot of adaptable capabilities, and as well as taking initiatives on their own learning, not anybody else, their own learning. They be very, selfish about their learning. It's fine. It's about them, and they be motivated. They be a driven person. Now we meet these kind of people. We don't, students don't come with a tag that I'm independent learner. But we as an academic, we understand, okay, this guy is a self-driven person. So he's an independent person. Yes, independent learner. Now, the biggest challenge of we as an academic, how to make an independent learner, that's challenging. We don't know. Now, you can say things, but we don't know how to do that. So, there has to be a way of doing. So my presentation throughout, I'm trying to talk about that and how to make finally the learner resilient. Now to start with how to make the learner more independent, I believe you should empower the learner. Now we discussed this terminology, empowering. I think Dinesh, we discussed these things in especially management and empowering employees as well. I believe these people are a little bit familiar about that. So here it's about empowering learners. Now, what is that? Empowering your learners. Now, empowerment it includes that we have to inculcate, we have to create the core skills and the attitudes, the right attitudes, where we make our learners able, we have to enable these learners to face the reality with conviction and courage because they don't see the reality. Because simply because they are not independent, they are not empowered, they don't see the reality, and they cannot face the reality with conviction and courage. That's why we always get, the telephone calls. Even yesterday, I got to calling me and said that, Madam, I got an F grade, and he was almost crying over the phone. So that is because he has no courage to accept the fact that I failed an assignment. So what? So I believe that at that moment I felt like, look, I think we made a mistake because we have not built these learners to face, this challenge. That's our problem. Now, if you have to do more, but I still believe we get the good students because we get good set of research scores. And after 13 years of heavy education, people come to University of Maratua with a lot of hopes, and they are hardworking people. Talking about the empowering of learners, and then now let's talk more about how to make these learners empower more. So, what makes a better independent learner? As I said, that I believe that we get good students. Yes, fine. So we have to believe them as well. So, but how to make a better independent learner? Now, this is a question that we have to answer once again. So, I think it's through the learning spaces. Now, what is a learning space? Now, we are in, a very high, reputed. We believe that the University of Maratua as a very pioneering and key university, which is able to talk about as a technical university, yes. And we provide a lot of services for the students, and we provide cutting-edge laboratories, good spaces and lecture theaters, laboratories, and so many other facilities. So all those things can be considered as learning spaces, yes. But specifically, the learning space can be defined as a place, anywhere that learners be able to grow emotionally, grow socially, grow physically, or grow academically. Now, it has to be provided all these services for these learners to grow physically, grow academically, grow emotionally, and grow socially. Now, we have to ask the question from all of us, are we providing a correct learning space for our students? So, are these facilities enough? Are these academic facilities enough for them to grow as, the learn or the grow learners? Now, it is our responsibility as teachers to create these learning spaces. I believe there are deans here, so who plays, a huge role in, everyday fights in, finding up and finding resources. But it's not only about that. We as academics and we as, the teachers, we have a lot of responsibilities in creating learning spaces for the learners. Now, how do we define a correct learning space or a good learning space? Or either I said at the title of my presentation, it's redefining the learning space. That is because we already have something good. So, when you talk about the better learning space, these are the characteristics I believe it should be having. A better learning space, it requires at least these 5 features in it. Now, the first learning space characteristics is that it should be flexible and adaptability has to be there. So, are we providing a flexible space for our learners? I believe it's partially we provide, but we have all sort of regulations and restrictions where students are sort of bounded into that. And also access to the resources. Now, what are access to the resources? Access in the sense all sort of physical resources like these kind of things. And we believe that its physical resource is redefined at the university. But it's not only about that, but academic resources in terms of, you know, probably you might say, yes, I upload my lecture material. Is that all that we talk about the resources? We have to provide all the resources, irrespective of what you teach in the class. Even the learner to learn as individual learner or an independent learner, all the access for the resource. So they are only if we can empower the learners that they have ability to do their own learning. And the next thing is about the collaboration. Now, the collaboration, when it comes to the collaboration, what comes into our head is the peer learning, which is wrong. It's not only about the peer learning that we talks about. The collaboration or collaborated environment, it has to be surrounded with a lot of different stakeholders like academics and academic support staff, the technical staff, and as well as the research students, the industry, maybe so many different, stakeholders that we need to talk about. And that is the collaboration really means about. But what we mean as the collaboration is the student has to do their projects with the peers. It's not only that. So collaborative supported learning space we have to provide for the learners. And the next thing is about the quiet zones. Now, what's a quiet zone is? So quiet zone and the focus areas are very essential for the learners because they have to do quiet learning, sit down and learn. Because they have to focus stuff, and otherwise, how do we let them to make themselves independent? So that facility has to be provided. In terms of quiet zone, yes, maybe the intellectual resources as well as the physical resources required to make the learning spaces better. Now, finally, I put this in green color, the technology integration. We as technology faculty, yes, I think we are the least people to talk about technology deans, but I think the technology has no boundary, technology has no limitation. So I cannot define what technology exactly means. Everything which support technically to make the learners and the teachers comfortable, we call it as a technology. So at least these 5 essential things to be there to make a better learning space. Now, when you still talk about our learners, what exactly we can do beyond the classroom? Because we meet every day the students, we meet them in the lecture theaters, in the laboratories, and also they come to see us to a lot of discussions about the projects. Now, is that all? So I came across this. This is something beyond, or if you think beyond, in class, of course, you can do all that. You can encourage people, you can make them prepare, you can support, you can give them guidance, involve with them and collaborate. But that's inside the class. So what else, of course, you can do beyond the class? Because once they go out of the class, we don't see what they do. So I believe you can use these kind of techniques to make this beyond classroom engagement, especially about the remote learning, open learning environments, informal learning, performance support, being as a good mentor, peer learning, and community-based learning. Now, if you can incorporate those features in your learning space, we can make sure that they don't only stuck in your classroom environment, but they go out of the class, beyond the class, and also they try to learn something. Now, even when you talk about all that, it's there are a lot of steps that we need to take to connect our classroom to learners' actual living on their lives. So
it's a question that what we can do. So, but it's simply the solution that I provide or everybody talks about is the technology. So building technology-powered learning space is one solution or one good solution for this question that I was raising, building technology-empowered learning spaces. Now, what are technology-empowered learning space? So basically, any technology that you can use to make the learner's life better, we can call that as a technology-powered learning. It's not only about the LMS that we are discussing about, not the Moodle. I don't think that we use enough technology to support learning. I mean, there has to be a lot of other facilities to make the learners comfortable and they see that, yes, I do have another option in learning. Now, when you talk about technology-driven learning spaces, what are the characteristics of these technology-driven learning space? Now, technology-driven learning space, I believe the main characteristic is the easy access to information. So a lot of students struggle with finding of information. It's all over. Like our DMS, it's like a Bermuda Triangle. When you put something into that, it's very difficult to find out because you cannot retrieve information. Some of the systems, some of the facilities that we provide, it doesn't provide a quick access for the learners. So access we have to think of because it's time that we talk about when you try to find a little piece of information, they struggle. And also facilitates the collaboration of learning and the communication through different channels, either social media or different quick groups that we have to use what the students are comfortable with. Not just only the email communication and the letters that we used to deliver 50 years back, but yet we still do that. But we have never thought about, I think we have thought about, but it's not practically happening yet. And also engagement and interactivity, interactive learning spaces, personalized learning experience, because personalized learning is something very crucial these days because not everything that we teach as a group, it suits for everybody. So we have to think of the personalizing of at least the learning experience suited for the learners. And also employ innovative instructional methods. When you think about instructional technologies, I think the young colleagues like Shalini, they have been learning these things in these days, the CTHE, a lot of instructional methods that you can apply, and effective and efficient assessment methods. So we have to think of the old methodologies of submitting these assessments, the deadlines. Are we really matters about that? So are they really learning about that? So is it like are they because very recently we found out in one of the matters when we are asking to find asking the lecture material, it's very easy. One student has sent me one, compiled, I think Maishika remembers that, one very nicely compiled lecture material used by the entire batch, 300 students. Now, is that what we have been doing? Teachers have been taught, assessment has been done, but finally the student has been created one lecture material shared by the 300 students. Now, are we talking about the technology-driven learning spaces? So when you use all these things, so this is a saying that today is the day to learn something new, is a saying that the students should be, here in their heads, irrespective of just, a matter of submitting an assignment, they come to the university or to do a project and, get a grade. And I think that's what the students are, talking about the most. Now, when you talk about the technology-driven learning spaces, the structure or the learning culture, it always has three main components: the learner, teacher, and the environment. So all three, the element has to be fulfilled in order to develop the technology-driven learning culture or the learning space. Now, when you talk about the learners definitely we believe that they are self-directed, self-motivated, or independent, or self-regulated. Where we as the teachers, we need to use different methods different structures, or we have to become a true facilitator for the learners, and as well as create new learning opportunities for them. And also, this technology driven learning space, the learning environment matters. The learning environment may be the ICT infrastructure, that's what we always try to talk about, resourcefulness, the libraries, e-materials, and etc. and etc. Those things are also really matters and essential. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to talk about technology driven learning culture. Now, all what we do here is to make this technology driven, to make these independent learners, to make them empowered. But what kind of a learner that we would like to see in the class? So we would like to see this kind of a learner who's really active. So out of which, who is an active learner? Is it a learner who jumps up and down in the class? No. So what is active learning? Is a scientific study, and it has been scientifically defined in education technology, who the active learner means, or the active learning means, which has been very nicely explained by Bonwit and Neeson in 1991. So this has really caught my eye, and I have been teaching this to the students as well, especially the final year level 4 final last semester students. Now, active learning is an instructional activity which involves the students. Students do things, and they think about what they have been doing. So we have to make the learners do things in the class, and we have to make them think about what they have been doing. So basically what we do is that we do things in the class, students just come and also do stuff, but I barely think that they actually think about what they have done in the class. So this is active learning means you have to get the students involved in doing things and get them think about what they have done. Now these kind of a student, to make this statement caught my eye as well by Benjamin Franklin. It said, "Tell me I forget, teach me I remember, involve me I learn." So you have to involve, engage the students in doing things so they will remember. So it's not just, it doesn't say that you don't have to, go in front of the class and teach. Yes, true. But you have to make them involved, and they will learn things and they will remember things. Now, if you further talk about this active learning as a concept, and it's theoretically defined in educational technology or especially in education, the main theory behind active learning is the constructivist learning theory. I'm not going to talk about the constructivism here, but easy way out is that I will refer these kind of models that everybody knows, right? Everybody knows, and everybody can, the young colleagues here also can use in developing your own learning experience, your lesson plans, your assignment, your any learning experience. You can use these kind of practices, things like ADDIE model, things like Azure model, Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, we know when we're doing curriculum revisions, we use the Bloom's taxonomy, but you don't have to think about what the taxonomy is about, but you can use Bloom's taxonomy for your work. And as well as reflective cycle, the Cobb's learning cycle. I think Nisha Ranjan would talk about that so much, about the reflective learning cycle of Cobb's. Now, these are sort of some of the things that we can use even without knowing what the constructivism is. So use them. You can do your own research at home, and then you can find out which kind of model suits for my lesson delivery. Now, some of the techniques, of course, you can use rather than finding a theory to design your learning experience. Now, these are some of the techniques that you can use in the class for active learning. Things like reciprocal questioning. So it's like you encourage, you just throw a question out of the context and let the students talk about it. And they start talking about it. You can ask further questions. It's an open-ended questions. And also the post procedure is that you can post 2 minutes every 12 to 18 minutes and ask, encourage the learners to discuss about the work. Retrieval practice, demonstrations. Yes, we do a lot of demonstrations. When they do the certain things, they have to demonstrate mini papers, concept maps, decision-making activities like case-based learning. I think some of these things actually then and there we learn and we use them in the class, but it's good if you can at least use one or two of these activities everyday class. So then learners be very active in the class. Now, when you talk about further motivate the learner, make them more self-directed, how to use technology to motivate learners. Now, if Google this, how to use technology to motivate learners, you will find 1001 articles written about that. Even the research papers, people talks about that. YouTube and see, a lot of things are there, and I'm not going to talk about that much what internet says and the researcher says about what technology, plays in the role of, the motivate learners. Yes, of course you can use because it's always changing and we do have to change. You can use technology to lead, the lasting for change, and as well as you can use to incorporate your learning activities interactively, personalized learning, constructive feedback giving, and collaborative in social engagement. So all sort of things, yes, of course you can do. Yet the technology be a little bit danger. Now, I'm not going to talk about how the technology be dangerous about the social interaction wise. It's being discussed, especially in social media and stuff. But this is not about that. So, but then how the technology becomes a danger for learning, maybe because of this. So right now the heating topic is that people do talk about the use of LLMs. Now this becoming a headache for us. Now, these OpenAI applications, even if you refer, the Google and see, Google Scholar, there are lots of, articles written about bad side of LLMs. Very rarely we see the good side of it. And also, people talk about students being unethical, being, copying their assignment, and, very rarely that students now, without using GPT, produce their answers. Now, what these OpenAI applications are all about. So I see the good side of it. OpenAI applications, please use. If you start banning this, it's again going to be a disaster and a half. So it helps. How? You have to, now if you see the learners, OpenAI applications, let the learners to use that because it gives them the personalized learning. Of course, at home you have somebody to ask questions. So, or else who was there earlier? Now, at least you have GPT to ask questions. Use GPT in the classroom. Fine. So it facilitates collaboration in the class. When you have a group discussion, ask them to use GPT. Ask them to use their own device. Facilitates the collaborator teams and make them think more rather taking things out of the GPT and create supplement content. Fine, it's all good that you can find, especially for the people who have language barriers. Now have a little bit of support and as well as facilitates discussions and Q&A sessions. It's good. So use it. Use it for your class facilitation and talk about it. So then what's the bad point of it? There are issues with OpenAI applications, especially the limitations of understanding the context. So I have seen that if you don't produce the right question, the way that the model has been trained, it gives a wrong, biased answer. So it's the question that you have to say for the students whether you really posed a correct question in the GPT. And as well as it's the potentially the biased response that always it gives, especially the positive answers. Positivistic approach it has been taken. it's always give the positive answers. And also limiting, the limitations of handling multiple tasks at once. So when you ask a double barrel question, it's hard for the GTP to answer. And also the accuracy issues, it's not always accurate, especially the language errors is also there. And what I see the most difficult issue in here is producing, the troubling of generating long form structured content. They can't. Long form structured content, GPT can't. So, and the ethical concerns when you copy. So these are the issues. Now, when you say these things, when you design your assignment, when you design your task, which cannot, let the learners to use GPT only, so they will use their own heads to do it. So it's fine if they partially find facts and all that, it's from the GPT, it's just a help, but not, entirely copying and pasting your entire assignment from the OpenAI applications. Now, this is the biggest challenge I see for the academics and the teachers right now. Now, further, when you talk about this OpenAI, but education has talked about openness. Now, it's not about the open AI applications. In educational technology, this concept has been taught already. This has been started in year 2007 when MIT started opening their entire courseware to the free of charge to the world. Openness started in 2007. Where the concept for the open educational practices, OEP, and open pedagogy has been started discussing. So OEP, open educational practices, is the key directive right now in the field of education across the globe, where you find out even free and open learning through where the students get even the degrees and the master's degrees. So where it describes the practice of how people create content, use them, redirect them, reuse them, and with the open licensing. So the open educational practices always coupled with the open educational resources and open technology, which this concept has been throughout in the educational technology is being discussed. So this is the model that actually the open education practices being used. Open education, especially one side you have the OER is open educational resources, as well as the open educational practices which make you more network, and as well as you empower learning and collaborative practice. So the openness, please use this. So it's not the open AI. So open AI, when it comes to the open AI, coupling with the open OER and OEP, it makes a different flavor into the education. So it's the final chapter of my presentation. It's about what makes a good learner resilient. So my topic was to talk about the resilient learners. So what makes a good learner resilient? So then who's a resilient learner? That is the first question. Resilient learner is a learner who possesses the capability to adapt into challenges, can recover quickly, can face different challenges with conviction. So all what we do is to make our learners resilient. So how do we make the resilient learners, and how do we really understand them, and what are their characteristics? So when you make the learners resilient, they have the growth mindset, and they're resourceful, they are flexible, as well as they seek help when they need. That is also really needed, and they are leveraging their strengths to overcome their challenges, self-regulated, self-motivated, and self-directed, and they learn from their own mistakes. Now this is a resilient learner, but we barely find the resilient learner in the class. So that is, I think, we as teachers are responsible for not making them resilient. So don't blame the students, it's us. So when you further talk about the resilient learners, so you always try to design a meaningful learning experience for the learners. Make your learning experience meaningful always. So what's the meaningful learning experience? So it's always you try to create learning activities where the learners support themselves in order to achieve their own intended learning outcomes. Now, in this case, of course, I have just listed few the models, very interesting models that has been found in the theory, but I'm not going to explain them. So you can refer these things. These are, high-end research about how to make, the now, this is first one is about the first principles of instruction, and then you can talk about the attributes of meaningful learning, and then 21st century learning is also some of the models which talk about the cognitive behavior of people, and so all these models actually theoretically explain about this. Theoretically explain about this. I'm not going to explain this. So finally, so throughout all that, this is where we should be ended up. We have to create lifelong learners. So lifelong learners should not stop their learning at the BMICH or at the level 4. They have to, start practicing this throughout their life. So they never stop to improve their skills or expanding their knowledge. So we have to make them think that what kind of importance that you have, support that you get from the lifelong learning that you possess. So basically, they get the job security wise when they release into the industry, and as well as career opportunities or confidence on them, because they are not reluctant to learn. They always try to learn them things and never stop learning. And also things like networking and motivation and so many other good things when you started becoming a lifelong learner. So finally, as academics, this is my advice for you. You have to make the learners passion. So creating the passion for the learners is difficult. So mostly we think it's the content delivery. We talk about the expertise of us. So there are a lot of experts in this house for different, areas that they have been trained to and they have been learned to. But making the learners the passion for their own learning is our responsibility. So it's not easy to do that. We have to devote, we have to think of what they can and what they believe, and we have to especially believe the students. So for the last 19 years, I have seen a lot of students grow themselves and they listen to us and they try to change and to create a passion with them. So everything what we do every day, every single day, what we do, I think we have to, think of how to making the learners passionate. So with that, my technical presentation is over. So the research phenomenon that I took is the educational technology as well as information technology. Those are two different pillars, but it goes together. And if I more elaborated on my research phenomenon, it's about three main, if you take the theoretical classes, it's the constructivism learning theory, the connectivism, and social psychology, social learning theories that I've been using for my own research. And as well as if you, in the educational technology, the areas that we are talking about, mostly that I'm talking about is the learn experience design via instructional design technologies, and the perspectives and preferences in learning. Also, reflective practices and transformational change is another field that I have been touched. Collaborative learning and engagement is another area. And also, the latest one is the authentic solution designing, which is our latest publication, which is a book chapter, is on press right now, which I will be making available for you sooner. It's about authentic assessment designing of for the undergrads, and it's always backed by the technology, especially the information technology, the areas of information technology. So this is the whole research phenomenon that my research is backed by. And if you further want to, search my research profile, you can go through the Google Scholar or the ResearchGate or Scopus or OCRID profiles. So that's about that. If you have any questions, you may ask. Thank you very much for all that. So before winding up, I don't think that I will get a chance to thank. So thank you very much, everybody. So if I may start thanking people, it has a long list to thank, but I'll keep aside and I may start from the day that I entered the University of Maratua somewhere in 2005 when the faculty has located in Borella. I would, rather start thanking the people who were there with me. Starting from the Dean of the Faculty of IT, the former Dean, Dr. Ajit Madhuraperumal, who wanted to be here today, but due to his official commitment, he couldn't. And the head of the department, because I have recruited to the Department of IT, Mr. D.K. Vitanake, and the PM Karunaratna was there from the beginning, and people like Dr. Rochandakaranatug, Dr. Firdaus, and Dr. Upiksha is also here, who were with us from Borella, and former deans of the faculty, Professor Dilika Dias, and Professor S. Karnananda, and Mr. Sudhanta being a super administrative person and helping me even right now. The most bothered person, I think, is me. Thank you, Sudhanta, for all that and for all the help. And there are many people, many academic colleagues for the last 19 years that if I go through from University of Maratua to thank, to help me to come across all the challenges and who I am today. And also my professional colleagues present here, starting from Professor Dinesh. Thank you very much for being here. Super wonderful research colleague and good friend always. Thank you, Dinesh, for accepting the invitation to introduce. And as well as Professor Gopura, the appointed FCS team. Thank you, Gopura, for all that. And Professor Sangika, my sister. Thank you very much for all that, being, the best professional colleague that I ever met is Professor Sangika. Thank you very much for being there behind me all the time and guiding me. And I publicly saying that you are always right. And also those who are here with us. And I would like to, especially thank my two families. I start with my own family, my parents, and my husband is here with us, Nandika. Thank you very much for the courage given to me. Thank you for that. And my son for being there and my entire family. And my super crazy family ideas. Oh my God, thank you very much for being here and so excited. So IDS is a super, family-oriented department. So it's, we actually share things. So I would like to thank everybody for being there, for all the work that you do. Thank you very much, me not as the HOD, but as a colleague of your own department, and especially people like Leelanga, Sumatu, Fita, Upeksha, and everybody. Thank you very much for being here. And also especially the non-academic staff, Niranjala, Susanta, and Kaushalya for being here. And thank you, FGS, for giving me this opportunity, super opportunity to express my ideas. And also there are some people who have been joining. I saw Mr. Karnaratna there. Thank you, sir. And others who are joining online. Thank you very much, everybody, for accepting the invitation and being here with us today. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Thanuja Sandanayake, for that very insightful session on leveraging educational technology and redefining learning spaces to build resilient learners. Your wisdom has truly enriched our gathering today. Moving on, I would like to extend a warm invitation to the Dean of the Faculty of Information Technology, Mr. B.H. Sulanka, to present the lecture memento to Professor Thanuja Sandanayake. Alongside, I would also like to invite Professor Thanuja Sandanayake to accept the lecture memento. Thank you, Mr. B.H. Sulanka and Professor Thanuja Sandanayake. Before we conclude today's event, let's take a moment to express our heartfelt appreciation to the sponsors of today's event. Cargill's Private Limited, our event sponsor, Daily FT, the printed media sponsor, and the Sri Lankan Scientist, the social media sponsor. With that, we have officially reached the end of the 24th inaugural lecture organized by the Faculty of Graduate Studies at the University of Moratuwa. Thank you everyone for gracing our session with the gift of your presence today. Till we meet again from the 25th inaugural lecture, stay tuned and thank you once again for joining us. Have a wonderful day ahead.